we're hoping to try to record this. So like my laptop's up here. If anyone has a problem, just because I want to remember I did something with my life. Stop that. Do something to. We'll see. Should be more. Hopefully, no. More than an hour. Shouldn't be too bad. If we start to get bored, I can just like flick through it. But it shouldn't get boring. My goal is to keep it not boring. Opposite. So how many of you guys are here for like extra credit or something? You need paper signed or something? Okay, 4 classes. I'm just out of curiosity. Really? Is that all you are here for? Really?
Hey, what's up?
What do you know? Or if you guys need anything signed, just like you guys need a sign-in sheet or. Oh, paper. If you just want to pass it around and put your name on it, then I'll be sure to get it. We'll start. We'll start with those. I'm just making sure notes.
On the topic what are the basically just a form of what this event was. I have to write a paper on why this might conflict there.
Of course. What do I sign? No? No problem. I'll write that. All right. My clock says 6. Let's go. All right, is everyone ready to get started? What's going on there? That's okay, I can talk about it. Did everybody hear me? Okay, this is about the volume I'll be talking at. If ever at some point you can't hear me, just say the word and I will try to talk louder. So, everyone ready to go? Yep. Alright, so hi everybody. As I think some of you heard before, my name is Aaron White, and I will be giving the presentation today. I am actually an undergrad here, same as you guys, I guess, since you're here for Dr. Hunter's class. But my major is middle level education, science and social studies, and what else? Also special education, sorry, there's three of them, it's hard to remember. As well as minor in music. And I don't really have a reason for this presentation other than to have fun. I enjoy getting up in front of people and talking, and this is basically, who likes hearing stories? Like stories? This is basically a bunch together. It's going to be a good time. But with that, it's not going to be a strict like, this person was born at this time, and they did this. That's boring. We're not going to do that because I'd put myself to sleep. But once again, it is learning. It's great. If you take a little bit away, that's okay too. Just have some fun while you're here. So let's get started. So the first thing is get the animation. Please come out. American Revolution. Does everybody know what the American Revolution is? Is there anybody who does not? Okay, so the educational system is doing something. So I'm not gonna go into detail about it. Basically, we didn't like Britain. They were ruling us. We like kicked them back, and now we're independent. And one of the people who helped us do that was Lydia Dara. And the dates, she was, her birth and death date are up there. You can look at those. I'm not going to mention them because you can see them. So Lydia Dara, she was actually from Ireland, and she moved here in 1729 to America. And once she came here, she had 5 children with her husband Benjamin. And the Daras had a pretty good sized house in Philadelphia. And so when the British came in, they're like, well, we need a headquarters. And obviously they're not gonna, live in the hut down the street. They're gonna find the biggest, nicest house they can find, which just happened to be the Daras. And they're like, why? But Lydia Dara was like, this is my house. I live here. You can come in, but we're not going out. We will live here. And the British are like, yeah, whatever. And so they let them live here. In the meetings of the high British officers, you know how like ranks works in wars, like you have like your privates down here, and you have like your other than the generals. This is where the generals had their meetings, were in her house. And while they were there, Lydia Dara would listen. And so how one of us explained is her room was right beside the room where they had the meetings. So they would be like, all right, go to bed. And she would go, yeah, go to bed. They'd like run up to the wall, stick your ear to it and listen. And hear all the secret intel, which then, then she would sneak away to the British. No, I didn't. Sorry, yeah, I did. I'm sorry. I know what I'm doing. So how she did this was very interesting. One was she would sew them the notes into buttons. So you know buttons like these little guys? Back then, this is what everything had. They didn't have any of these zippers or whatever other fancy things you have. All they had were buttons. So she would take the notes on the meeting and have her husband write them in shorthand on a tiny piece of paper, which she would fold up into a button and then sew it to the shirt, which she would then sew onto her son's jacket, who would in turn go and visit. I had a button again. Sorry, I cannot hold this thing when I talk. And then would in turn go to visit her other son, who was in the Continental Army, delivering the button and therefore the secrets. And that worked pretty well for the 8 months of occupation. And then we have December 2nd. So the British had a very, very top secret meeting. All these meetings were secret to the point where they had to be in their room by usually, about nighttime, about 9. So they let them, have their lovely day, and then, all right, time for bed, go to bed, we're going to have our meeting now. They put them to bed early this day, because this was a super top secret meeting. They're like, you will not hear any part of this. There's not taking any chances, you're going to bed. And they're like, okay. And Lydia Dara, being who she was, stayed up and took notes. When it came to these taking notes, you see, she took them, and then they put her under house arrest because you have somebody who's ever told a secret? We've all told secrets, I'm sure. You don't want them getting out. And so they were so worried about these secrets, they put them under house arrest, which basically meant they were not allowed to leave that house until after these plans took effect. But Lydia, being her clever self, went, well, I need more flour. And the British were like, that's pretty cool. Flour, you eat that. I enjoy food, but that sucks. And she's like, well, I am the woman of this house. It's my house. I feed the people in it. I need flour. And they're like, okay, fine. Just go straight there and straight back. And she went not even straight there. She went over to a local bar, which was known to be not a hideout, but was known to be frequented by the Patriot, not spies, these were the informants. And so she went there, and she was recognized by one, and she's like, listen, I got this information, you have to get it to General Washington, right now, or bad things will happen. And so this informant, knowing the quality of Dara's previous stuff, went, of course, sure thing, and they did. And the fun thing was, this wasn't no little plan like, we're going to move our troops from here to here. This was a full-blown attack. So at this time, Washington had been beaten out of Philadelphia, and he was holed up in some trenches and defensive works a little to the northwest. And while up there, they were just not lackadaisical, but it was during the winter, and back then you didn't fight during the winter. It was cold, it was muddy, so you just kind of sat tight until spring came. Then you went out and shot each other again. So they weren't expecting anything. So this is why the British decided to attack now, because it would be a total surprise. But it's not a surprise because Lydia Dar was able to tell General Washington. And Washington went, okay, this is serious, because you're never sure that the intel you get from people, from the spies. Sometimes the spies don't lie, but they hear things wrong. And other times, the enemy's like, all right, they're a spy. I'm going to tell them false information so that they give the false information to the enemy to totally blow them off, which is actually what we did at D-Day. That's another story for another time. And so General Washington, he was like, well, okay, Lydia Dawes, she's had pretty good information, so even if it is false, this is the big thing, we're going to go and set up defensive positions, which they did, and to the hour, she said, the British attacked on that very spot that she said. And so, December 8th, the fourth day after the first attack, the British were totally aback. They threw everything they had, the Federal, or not the Federal at this point, sorry, that's the wrong word, threw everything they had at the Continentals, but they wouldn't budge, because the defensive works were so strong and well built from being, notified ahead of time. And so after a while, the British were like, well, we're not going to get very far, so let's just pack up and go home. So they packed up and went back to Philadelphia. And once they got back, they're like, wait a minute, how could Washington have known that we were going to attack? And naturally, who would they question but Lydia Dara, the person who was a spy that they didn't know who was a spy, whose house they were staying in. And they went, all right, what are you telling them? And they're like, I have no idea what you mean. And I don't know how she managed this, but she managed to fool them. So much so that they're like, okay, you're fine. I don't know where the leak came from. Wasn't this place. Yes?
Say, oh, we think someone's telling you to be a leak. All of you, go get up on what's happening.
Yeah, see, that was my first thought. But I told you I should be holding this quicker. From what I gathered, the British weren't too worried because back then it was common. Because now, we have these huge trucks that hold the headquarters, mobile headquarters units. So they drive it out and right there, all computers, everything you would ever need to army. That's not a verb, but we're gonna use it as a verb. Back then they didn't. You would have to unpack it from wagons. They would take over the house. So instead of just coming and saying, "Listen, this is our house. Get out of here," they decided they were usually nice. They did this up until the Civil War. They wouldn't usually kick the people out, just limit their access to the sensitive areas, just to be nice. It is their house. They do take care of it, so they try to be a little bit nice, even though they were fighting us because we wanted to be independent. That's a whole other story. But they never caught on, and that one piece of information helped them win the war. If it wasn't for Lydia Dar hearing this, Washington's army would have been demolished. And at that point, in the United States back then, the Continentals would have had little hope to win the war at that point. So Lydia Dar's information was vital to us being in America today. Well, they were stupid. Not only they were stupid. it does seem stupid from our point of view, but when you were back then, that was just a protocol. And also, another thing I didn't mention on the slide, they saw women as feeble-minded. I don't believe that. I'm just saying that because that's what they thought. So they believed women were like, oh, women can't think. They don't remember stuff to go tell other people. They're not capable of that. Why do I have to worry? They can't even write half the time, which is all false. Most women could write, had better memory, and all that stuff. But back then, that's just a thought. So they were very concerned about it. But if you want to know more, you can do some research on it and, do some research on like customs of taking over a house. But moving on from that, we're going to move on to our next person, Nancy Hart. And we talked about somebody from up north, and she's more down south in Georgia. So Nancy Hart was very little known about her early life. She was either born in Pennsylvania or Kentucky, no one's really sure, but she was born in one of the two. And she she might have been related to the frontiersman Daniel Boone. If anybody of you have heard of him, he's kind of famous. He did some pretty cool stuff. But she was illiterate, but she was a very skilled herbalist and survivalist. And she lived with Benjamin Hart and her 8 children down in Georgia, and I believe Wolfe County, Georgia. And her husband went to war, and she took care of the farm, and also spawned the British. Yes, she, as one of her accounts wrote, I did the unspeakable, the worst thing I could have done to my husband when he went to war. I spied on the British, which I thought was kind of funny because that's not what you think of, but it's kind of dangerous. But anyhow, she spied on the British during the war. And what she would do is she would usually dress up as a man and then just, kind of be feeble-minded once again, like not very smart, kind of like not with it. And she would just walk around the British camps and just listen and gather information and take it back, give it to the Continentals. They would then use it and get stuff in half. And the one story right here, you see the one story I have, about one day she was sitting there making soap. Because back then you could just go to the store and buy soap, but it was a lot easier and cheaper just to make it. So she was making soap, and her daughter's like, wow, there's a hole over there, like fine on it. And she's like, oh, that's cool. And just, mixing the soap, took a little one, and splashed in the face, and scalded the person. Then tied them up, gave them to the British, gave them to the Americans, he was British. And got some information out of him. So that's a fun little story. This is another fun little story that Nancy Hart had going for her at this time. So once again, you know how I said that with Lydia and Jar, the British came and said, hey, we're taking over your house, but you can stay here. That's, once again, the protocol. Another one of the protocols was you had to find food. Nowadays, we have massive convoys following the army wherever they go. We have meals ready to eat, MREs. We have food and all that stuff shipped right to them. Back then, they didn't always. A lot of the food they had was salted, so it's like salted pork, hardtack, salted beef, maybe beef jerky if they were lucky, but it was unflavored as they didn't have all the spices we have today. So when they had a chance to eat actual fresh food, they were like, I love turkey. I'm going to eat some turkey. And Nancy Hart had a turkey. Yeah, she had a turkey. And so like, that's our turkey, we're gonna get it. So they went over, killed the turkey, and they're like, hey woman, this was yours, I killed it, make me dinner. And she's like, cool, I guess. And so she started making them dinner, but there was a twist to it. She had a little plan to get them drunk off of whiskey that she had. And so she was, giving all the whiskey they wanted to get them drunk. And every once in a while, when they would turn their back, she would take one of their guns and sneak out the hole someone was spying on them through. And she got to about the third gun in her hand, shoving out the hole, when they went, wait a minute, our guns are disappearing, you're throwing them out the wall. And so then she brandished the gun, brought it up, and is like, don't move or I will shoot you. And they're like, ha, you're a woman, you can't shoot a gun. And the one person lunged at her, she shot, killing one, wounding another, and the other four were like, okay, this woman can shoot, we give up. And this is just, there we go, that's a fun picture of that scene. And you can see, she's holding a gun, and the one there is wounded, the other is dead. The other like, please, don't kill us, we surrender, sorry, you can have your turkey back, even though it's dead. But then, after the soldiers surrendered, she said, all right, just stay there, don't move, keep the gun on them and all that good stuff. Got them tied up, got them secured. And then her husband came home with the neighbors and found them tied up. And they did what any, good old American would do back then, hung them from a tree, which is a lot more common than you think, or would think it would be back then. Once again, that's a picture. And then after the war, she moved up to Brunswick, which is a little bit closer to the shore down in Georgia. But then her husband passed away, so she went to move back to her cabin, but her cabin had been washed away in either a flood or by wind or something. It just wasn't there. So she went up to Kentucky to live with her son. I think it's weird. I did not hit a button that time. That was not me. We'll see later. So she went up into Kentucky to live with her son for the remainder of her days. And how many people have heard of Nancy Clark before today? Oh my gosh, cool. So very few people know her story, but it was kind of interesting though, and she did so much for the area that they actually named a lake and a city and a county and a highway after her. I looked it up and they are actually like pretty cool names. One of them is the lake is a dam, which gives hydro electricity to the neighboring city if anyone really cared that much. Once again, that's her cabin right there, as you can see. Not very much, pretty minuscule. I don't think the hole is in it. That, she sent the gun down and all that stuff, probably you can't see it. But that is what her cabin was. And they went back down, the daughters of the revolution went down and rebuilt for her. Or not for her, for the public to view. And the next person we have is Sybil Ludington. So who has heard of Sybil Ludington? Just like, raise your hand. Don't be shy. Nobody's heard of Sybil Ludington. Okay, somebody has. Who's heard of Paul Revere? Everyone's hand goes up. Sybil Ludington, this is my favorite story. We'll get towards the end. Now just remember that pool. All of you knew Paul Revere, no one knew Sybil Ludington. So Sybil Ludington lived in Connecticut on the Long Island Sound. Just above Danbury, yeah, around Danbury. And her father, in the French-Indian War, he was a colonel, like a high-ranking officer, he commanded troops and very respected. So he was in charge of the Connecticut militia during the Revolutionary War. This was about early spring. The British decided to attack Danbury. What had happened is the Long Island Sound, is near New York. They went up into Connecticut and got beaten in a few battles by the Patriots, and then going back to the Sound to get on ships and run away. And as they were going, they were destroying everything. One of the towns that was in their path was Danbury, Connecticut. And they're like, well, we gotta do something. We can't just, let them walk back out and destroy everything in retreats. So Ludington went, all right, we gotta assemble the troops because they sent them away for planting season. So you know how we get out of school during the summer? That's actually because it's an agrarian calendar. Long story short, during the summer you farmed, and so you couldn't go to school to help your family with the farm. Same idea with the troops. Come summer or early spring, most of them went home to tend to the farm, plant the crops and all that good stuff. So he didn't have any men, so he had to go round them up. So he said, I need someone to go round them up. And unsure whether Sybil volunteered or was told to, but she rode around to the neighboring farms and got all these men together. Over 100 men in total showed up that she gathered. They marched to Danbury, Connecticut, and shot the British, but they weren't able to hold them back. So overall, Sybil Ludington, estimates vary, but most say she rode about 40 miles in one night, alerting the Patriots to the British coming down to Danbury. Paul Revere rode 12. She rode just about 4 times as long, or 4 times as far, and just about as long as Paul Revere did, but nobody knows her name, as we will show. And there's a few reasons for this. I thought to myself, why would you hear of this? This is incredible. She's 16 years old. This isn't even, she wouldn't even be a sophomore in high school nowadays. And she's out there riding a horse doing almost 4 times as much as Paul Revere, but never heard of. So I was thinking about it. And one of the things I was reading, it said Paul Revere rode in the very first battle on Lexington Concord. Everyone knows that. Shot her around the world, all that good stuff. So that may have been due to it, or that ended in victory. We managed to chase the British away and save the stores. But Ludington, it wasn't so successful. They managed to save a little bit of Danbury, but they didn't stop the British from the retreat. But the most likely, has everyone heard the poem Paul Revere's Ride by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow? Some people heard it, I see some head nodding. Yeah, very famous poem written about Paul Revere, and it came out in 1860, making him instantly popular because back then, you couldn't sit down on TV and flick a switch and watch. I don't watch TV. I don't know what shows on anymore. Family Guy, no, that's one. Don't just watch TV. You would read poetry. So this came out, and we're like, this is great. And it made him an instant success, instantly known throughout the nation. But no one wrote about Sybil Ludington, and they believe that's why it's not known about her. But either way, it's just incredible to think that this little girl did more than Paul Revere, and nobody knows her name. Yeah?
What kind of horse was she riding to go 4 miles, 4 times farther
It was.
in the exact amount of time?
I believe it was a sturdy horse. It wasn't. I really don't know. Records don't count. They didn't have many breeds back then, or they did. They just really didn't care. They did have your riding horse and your plowing horse. That was about the most differentiated the horse species got. So that was the story of Sybil Ludington, and nobody remembers her, but Danbury does. So this is a statue of her they have in Danbury, Connecticut, thanking her for her her amazing deeds in riding around and getting the army, because however, she did not stop the British. She kept them out of Danbury, saving most of the town. All right, now we get to the American Civil War. Does everyone know about the Civil War? Who does not know about the Civil War? All right, we all heard it once again. Education system is doing something. Wait, 5 seconds. All right, so this is where we're going to some fun stories. So the first one is Isabella Belle Boyd. Most of the times she's called Belle, which is why it's. So she was born in Martinsburg, Virginia, to an affluent Southern shopkeeper and also tobacco farmer. She was a really spirited child, and she attended college and actually graduated at 16. It's pretty impressive. I'm 21, still going here. Back then it was a little different still, but still. And she was really proud because the war broke out, and Virginia, of course, went south, as most of us would know. And her father immediately went and signed up to fight under, I guess her Stonewall Jackson, the very famous general, immediately went to fight for him. And she's like, I'm so proud of you. And so she went and followed him to the area and helped sew clothes for them, gather food, ammunition, all that kind of stuff to help support the war effort. And then, after a while, her hometown was captured. Has anyone heard of West Virginia? If no one, someone raise your hand if they haven't. And if you have you not heard of West Virginia? If you haven't, look at a map. Or geography. West Virginia was actually not founded. I don't know if you find a state, but it was created in the Civil War in the very beginning. Because Martinsburg, Virginia, turned into Martinsburg, West Virginia. West Virginia was full of Union sentiment. So when Virginia's like, we're leaving, West Virginia was like, no, 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 we're staying. And that's how we got Virginia and West Virginia. But back to our story. So So let me see. Well, after this, a drunk soldier broke into her house. It's like, that's it. All the Union are stupid. I don't like them. They stole my house. They broke into my house. We're done. So she starts spying on them. So she started recruiting Union camps. And one of the big things you'll see is this gender stereotype back then. Like I said, nowadays women are incredible people. Back then, women were also incredible, but they weren't thought of as incredible. They were thought of as feeble-minded, incapable, just dull-witted, dim-witted. Anything you could think of that means not smart was applied to women because guys were jerks. If you argue they still are, but that's not for another time. Anyhow. So she was carrying a whole bunch of reports. She would go, get the information, turn around, and give it to the generals and the proper people to help save the day. And you can see, they didn't know her name, because if you're a spy, you're not going to go, hi, I'm Aaron, I spy. They're going to catch you. And so this was all the fun names that the press would call her. The Belle Rebelle, the Siren of the Shenandoah, the Rebel, Joan of Arc, and the Amazon of Succession. And that was all totally fun. There was just some fun names they call them. And on that name right there, that's not my button. Sorry, I'm not. What is it doing? Alright, sorry. She was in a relative's house during the Battle of Fort Royal, which was part of the Peninsula Campaign, if any of you heard of that. And while in her relative's house, which she just happened to be here, I think it was planned, but nobody really knows. But she took notes on the meeting and immediately got them to General Jackson. And as she was flying across the fields, this is what one of General Jackson's aides described. He described seeing the figure of a woman in white gliding swiftly out of town. She seemed to keep neither weeds nor fences, but waved the bonnet as she came on. So, she's like flying over here, waving the bonnet, like, hey, I'm here, look at me, don't shoot me, I'm with you, as she comes flying across the city. And then Bill immediately later wrote, the federal pickets immediately fired upon me. My escape was most providential. Rifle balls flew thick and fast about me, so near my feet as to throw dust in my eyes. Numerous bullets whistled by my ears. Several actually pierced different parts of my clothing. So she was being shot at and almost being shot and still going to get this information. That's how dedicated she was to, her cause of getting the information there. And for all this information, she received a personal thanks from General Jackson, which was pretty impressive back then. So, well, what her plans were basically got the troops needed to, because the rebels were changing their class. They were going this way. The Federals were going to cut them off. And it was basically information that said, hey, they're going this way, go this way. And they did, and they won the battle because the information she got to them. And so after the war, during the war, she was arrested 6 or 7 times, but every one of them she somehow managed to weasel out of until she didn't. So eventually, the Secretary of War, like the head of all the war, Army, Navy, all that stuff, he was so annoyed at Bell that he put out a warrant for her arrest, which eventually they did, and they arrested her, and then she escaped to England, but tried to. She was arrested again. Sorry. This was her house. Once again, you can see it's a nice stately mansion, and it is the older style, but very nice. That was what most of the affluent people lived in back during the Civil War. Right. So she managed to escape to Canada, and then she went to England, where she stayed for a few years until the war was over. Then she came back. But while she was over there, she wrote her memoir titled "Bellboy in Camp and Prison." And that was basically, I did this, but then, if you catch a fish that's this big, and you go home, you're not going to say, I caught a fish. You're going to be like exaggerating, the fish hyperbole, and basically stretch the story out and her exploits out to a huge level, to the point of some people argue whether how much of it's actually fact and how much of it is her saying, I'm cool. That can be debated for a while. And then she was an actress, and that's it. And here's one of my personal favorite stories, Aunt Jemima, who likes pancakes, maple syrup, and all that good stuff. All right, who served Aunt Jemima's the maple syrup pancake bread? Oh, no, have you heard of it? Well, it's by Quaker Oats. It's pretty big. But we all know the lovely Aunt Jemima syrup. It has a picture of a black woman on it who is the spokesperson of it. But nobody knows where she's from. And this story is actually very hotly debated. I had to call, and when you went online, there were very few records of this story. I actually had to call up to Vermont and call several different Maple museums and several different other museums to make sure the story, because I'm going to tell you it's a false story, to make sure the story was credible. Once they said it was, they had proof, and I'm like, all right, I'll tell it. So whether or not you'll believe this, I'll put up to you, but I probably have multiple sources saying this is true. You just won't find it online. So take the story and I'm going to listen up. So, Aunt Jemima was a free black woman who lived up in Vermont, which was maple syrup. That's where maple syrup was. And Vermont's biggest part of the economy was maple syrup, and it was the largest producer of maple syrup in the world at the time. And maple syrup was very expensive, and it was worth a lot of money because it was so hard to make. And you guys don't appreciate this. There's numbers. But sugar was worth 9 cents a pound. Do you guys do research papers? Yeah, we do. It took me forever to find that number, 9 cents, because I had eventually found a document from the U.S. congressional writings about maple syrup production where they mentioned it. So it took me probably an hour to find it. I was determined to find out how much it was. So it took me an hour of sifting through old documents, online of course, to find this. And it was in a book of congressional reports released in 1863. But fun fact. Anyhow, so it was worth about $2.75 today, which isn't a lot, but back then it was kind of a bit because it was a luxury. Back then you didn't have money to spend on your Xbox or some nice pair of shoes or anything like that. Your money had to go towards life because you didn't have a lot of it. And so when maple syrup was almost $30 a gallon, you didn't really, spend it because you didn't have a minimum wage back then. How you got your money was mostly you were farmers, and so you sold what you made. So you didn't grow a lot, you didn't have a lot to sell, and you didn't have a lot of money. So this was a luxury a lot of people couldn't afford, but since they couldn't afford it, it was really, really expensive. And it was the base of their entire economy. This is not fun numbers. So one town produced $200,000 worth back in 1863. That's almost $5 million in today's money. One town, one single town, produced about $5 million maple syrup in 1 year. And so, being as it was so expensive, they treated it like gold, and they actually kept it locked in bank vaults to make sure nobody could steal it or break it, because that is what their entire economy is based on. And of course, somebody wanted to steal and break it because that's so there wouldn't be much story with it. So she worked as a waitress in a local little inn or tavern, making food and serving it as a waitress. And one day she heard some Southern sympathizers talking about the bank vault, we're going to go in there and steal the maple syrup or break it or something, cripple Vermont's economy, lower the morale back home, and make the Union want to quit, therefore winning the war for the South. And she heard this, and she's like, that's bad. And went to the sheriff and said, hey, Sheriff, I heard these people talking. We need to do something. And so the Confederates went through with their plan and broke into the vault. When it was empty, all it was full of was just sticky maple sap, residue and stuff like that. But when they came out, there were a whole bunch of guns pointing at their face because Aunt Jemima let them know that there were going to be robbers, and so they were prepared for them. And as part of being prepared, they took the syrup to Montpelier, Vermont, which is, I believe, the capital. Don't quote me on that, I actually don't know. But there's a big town in Vermont where they maple syrup, so it was out of town. The vault was empty when the people came to get it, therefore saving the maple syrup and Vermont's economy. And then this is the brand, this is the story. This is kind of, I just thought it was a little fun to talk about it because this is where it got from it. So in the 1889, Quaker Oats developed this ready mix pancake mix, because before then you had to go make your own pancake mix. It's not hard, but it's so much easier just to add water and have pancakes. But they needed a spokesperson. Every good brand has a spokesperson, whether it's that tiger for Frosted Flakes or the leprechaun for Lucky Charms. Everybody has a spokesperson. Who doesn't love smiling leprechaun? And so they're like, all right, who are we gonna do? And so they heard the name Aunt Jemima when they were in Vermont. They kept hearing it, and they decided to use the name because it was a local Vermont legend as well as a nice auntie name that you could put on a bottle and make it feel all snug and warm inside. But so this is what we have today, and this is more fun. So everyone, I'm sure, is aware of slavery and the racism in America, right? This was their brand. This is what they drew of Aunt Jemima when it first came out in the 1860s and into the 1900s. Sorry, 1890 into the 1900s. That's what they chose. And horrible things. But luckily they got smart, and now we have this little lady on there. Good old maple syrup from Vermont. But once again, it's lost to the wind. And now we get to Elizabeth Van Lew first. It's so weird. So Elizabeth Van Lew was born in Richmond, Virginia at the start of the war and was born to a rich slave-holding, well-to-do family. And she went to school up in Philadelphia to a Quaker school. Everyone heard of the Quakers? Quaker Oats. It's a religious. No one's heard of it? It's just a religious branch during the First and Second Reformation. Just look it up if you want. If you don't, it doesn't matter. All right, but so she lived in Virginia, went to school in Philadelphia, and one day her father died. And when her father died, she released all the slaves, which is very unheard of down south, because because that's how you made your money. And she actually freed the slaves and then paid them to stay and keep working on the farm. So basically, instead of having slaves, she now has workers, which I think is a pretty cool thing. But other people of Richmond did not. And so when the war started, Richmond became the second Confederate capital and the main Confederate capital. And it was right down the road from Van Loo's house, which just, let's just take a moment to appreciate. So up here we have the White House. Beautiful, big marble building. That's a White House. They should call it the White House. Very original, right? The Confederate's capital, it wasn't even white, but it was the Confederacy, or the Confederate White House, the White House of the Confederacy. Was their capital. Like, you think you would change it? Like, they're trying to get away from America, yet they literally steal the name for a house that's not even white, but that's just a little fun fact. I don't know why they did that. But, she began assisting the POWs in the camp in Libby Prison, which was just down the road from where she was, and she convinced the generals to allow her and her mother to be nurses, as well as bring in supplies, medicine, all that, to help the troops who were, in prison. And she actually helped some of them escape. Like, it wasn't the Underground Railroad, that was for the slaves. It was sort of like that, where she's like, I'm not going to help you escape, but if you were to escape and come to my house, I can get you up north. And which is actually how she helped a lot of people escape that way. But she caught a lot of flack, because if you're fighting people and all of a sudden somebody in your rank is going, hi, I'm going to be nice to you, I don't like it. So she became that caught a lot of flack and was very targeted with hate for helping the Federals. And so by doing this, they wanted her to say, well, maybe I shouldn't, maybe the Confederates are right. Maybe the United States is all old history, new. It's time for another revolution. But what they did was she actually went, well, you're going to be mean to me, I'm just going to keep doing more and more. What she did, she kept doing more and more. This was her house. As you see, pretty fancy, like I said, well off. This is where she lived and housed not all her slaves, but most of her slaves, that she actually had to come live with her after she freed them. And so in December 1863, two soldiers who escaped went to General Benjamin Butler in and told him about Van Loo's spy ring, because she didn't just sit there and had her spies. She had a whole series of spies giving her information. And then, this is the fun story. This guy just escaped from the prisoner of war camp, which was very horrible conditions, which is why they really needed Van Loo's help. But the general went, oh, that sounds cool. Go back. So he just got out of Richmond and told to go back to Richmond, to the very place he was held prisoner, just to tell Van Loo to be a spy. And so they said, hey, do you want to be a spy? And she's like, I'm already a spy, sure. And she became the Union Spy Master of Richmond, Virginia. And she actually became the main information portal of all the stuff from Richmond in the Confederacy. And she often used her former slaves actually as informants. So she would get them jobs, in very prominent places, and then go and get the information. Sorry, it's really pretty outside, and we got distracted for about 5 seconds. Back to the presentation. Sorry. So the ways she would use this or sneak out this information is she would either hide them in her shoe, which is very basic. You just take a piece of paper in your shoe, or to have a seamstress sew the note into her work. So she was making a quilt, she would stick the note in there, and then use the quilt moving. My favorite is she would actually get hollowed out eggs, and then put the note in there, then hide them in a basket of regular eggs, and then sneak the eggs out. And as I was saying, we're back to this later. So as I was saying, she did spying stuff, and at one point, the Union soldiers tried to free the prisoners of the prison by, basically going and fighting their way to Richmond, to the camp, and doing this. And in charge was Colonel Ulrich Dahlgren, and a colonel. And they went, and the information that Van Loo had about the Federals, the rebels, she said the rebels were going south because they were packing up and going to reinforce Johnson in Tennessee. What happened was that the train got delayed, and so they were actually still there. So when Dahlgren came in to, punch some rebels in the face and free some slaves, it didn't work out that way because they were still there. And Dahlgren actually got shot. And those people, the Confederates went, all right, listen, he's might be our enemy, but we're still gonna bury him. So they gave him a nice little grave and they buried him. Then somebody started a rumor that he was sent specifically to assassinate their Confederate president Jefferson Davis, which kind of sounds like, I don't know how a rumor like that was started, but that's how things worked back then. And so everybody went, oh, he's an evil person, let's go make an example of him. So they took him and put his body on display by the railroad station and said, hey, look at this guy, mess with the Confederates, that happens to you. But Davis himself heard this, and he's like, guys, that's not cool. He might be bad, but like he's still like a person, so take him down. And so to make sure that this body was well taken care of, Jefferson Davis himself had it taken down and buried in a very secret spot that only him and a handful of people knew. But wouldn't you know, one of the people who helped bury him was Van Loo's informants. And so Elizabeth Van Loo organized people to go and recover Dahlgren's body. So they went in and to this new grave and got his body and hid it themselves so it was protected. Only little downside to this is that the Union went, listen, you have Dahlgren's body. His parents were like him back. They really miss him. He was a good guy. Get the body back. And Davis went, of course you can have it back. They went to the burial spot and he was dug up and missing. So by trying to take the body and protect it, she actually delayed in getting back to the family, but she had good intentions at heart, you know. So we can forgive her for that. But anyhow, yeah. They didn't want it to get like ransacked. All things going out of Richmond had to be checked, which is why they like hid the stuff. And so you can't have a big crate and be like, there's nothing in there, definitely not a body. So it was just practice to hold on to it until the war was over or it was a good time to send it back. But now continue with the story. So she had, by June 1864, she had more than a dozen people in her little spy. And she had, like I said, she had people jobs in influential places. She actually had some of her former slaves working in the Navy Department and the War Department, who get them good information on that stuff. And she even had somebody who we'll talk about here shortly in Jefferson Davis's own house. She had somebody in the White House gathering information for her on the Confederates. But so this is one of my favorite stories of in here, or one of my blog favorites. Anyhow, we'll get back to it. So General Grant captured the city in April 1865. 1865. And before that, when it was like a definite for sure thing that they were going to win, Elizabeth Van Loo had a huge flag smuggled in for her. So when the news came that Grant was coming into town, the Confederates left, and everyone was leaving, she went outside and flew the gigantic 18 by 9 foot flag from in front of her house as all the Confederates were leaving. If that's not the biggest, like, just think about how amazing this would be, or not amazing, how horrible this would be if you're Confederate, but just walking down and seeing the enemy flag up by somebody who lived there their entire life. It made her feel really good about herself, but really, like, that, if anything, ruined her reputation. But Grant came by and said, because she gave all this good information, and she actually said that Grant said to her, you have sent me the most valuable information out of Richmond during the war. So he personally visited Van Loo's house to say, thank you for being a spy and all the information you've given me. But after the war, her social status was, like I said, shot to ruin. They could fly the enemy's flag as you're running away from the city because the enemy's coming. You're not going to be well liked. So her social status was gone, and she was branded as a spy, which she found unfair. One of the quotes she wrote in her diary was, I do not know how they can call me a spy. It should be my own country within its recognized borders, because the Confederate States were never recognized. Fun fact, most people don't know. You know how we had the Confederate States of America during the Civil War? It was never its own country. It was still the entire time a part of the United States, just a different area who considered themselves. So a big thing about it was they would try to go and get Britain to say, yes, you're a country. Because if Britain would say, yes, you're a country, then they could get support from outside, and then the United States would have to recognize them as another country. But nobody did that. They were actually just part of the United States who wanted to be a separate country who never was. So back in the book. So she said, for her own country, within its recognized borders, for my loyalty am I now branded as a spy by my own country for which I was willing to lay down my life. Is that honorable or honest? God knows. So basically what this says is like she was a spy for her country, in her country, and now her country hates her for spying on the country. You see the thoughts of like, basically she did, it's confusing, but basically the people hate her for spying on the country, which was her country the entire time, but they still hate her. It's a lot of hate. But the people of Brisbane could not forgive her. They did not forgive her until the day she died for what she did to their glorious Confederates. And I am held in contempt and scorn by the narrow-minded men and women of my city for my loyalty. Socially living is as utterly alone in the city of my birth as if I spoke a different language. So they barely said a word to her. She lived her entire life in the same house, and they barely gave her the time of day because she was a spy for the Union. And this is one of the sadder parts of the presentation, or of her story especially. So after the war, she kind of she kind of ran out of money because she spent a lot of the family's fortune being a spy. And the United States gave her a little bit back, but it wasn't nearly enough as much as he spent. And when Grant got into office, Grant remembered how good of a spy she was. It's like she could run stuff. She can aspiring. She can run mail. And appointed her postmaster of Brisbane when he became president. But as soon after Hayes took office, she was no longer spy master because, well, he didn't see the need for it. And so now she was 70 years old and had no job, no income, and little money. But during the war, she actually helped one of Paul Revere's grandsons. She wrote to the family saying, hey, I helped your son. I have no money. Can you please spend a little bit? And they said, oh, of course, because you helped our son escape from prison, take the money. And so they were able to give her a little bit of money. She did this with a few other people that she helped save over the war, and that is how she made her living until she died in 1900. All right, and now we talk about Mary Beth. Really fast. All right, so remember how I said that Elizabeth Van Loo freed her slaves, then had her slaves, and turned them into informants in very high risk places, like of crucial importance. One of those people was Mary Bowser. So Mary Bowser was one of the slaves, and she was freed by Van Loo after her father's death. And Van Loo sent her to Philadelphia to get an education. And then when she got back, she sent her now. I'm never heard of Liberia. It's not that important. Do some research if you want. It's pretty interesting, but you don't have to. Sent her to Liberia as a missionary right before the war started. And then the war started, and she's like, yeah, she come back. And then when she got back, Van Loo then used her as a spy. And she actually got her a job in the Confederate White House. So the South, once again, the South was very racist. I mean, they owned people. They were, I'm more racist. Yeah, but being so racist, they didn't they didn't think women had mental capacity. So black women had even less. And so they would just let her, go about and think this was them being really stupid, like the British in the Revolutionary, letting people stay in the house, really discussing stuff, and that sort of thing. They let her walk around during the meeting and around the sensitive information, like the papers have out of her. She had access to while she was cleaning, and so she was able to remember the stuff from the conversations and actually take the papers and take them out with nobody noticing. And one of the things that really helped her is she had a fantastic photographic memory, which is basically meant that when she saw something, she would remember it well enough to go back and draw it line by line perfectly, which helped her a lot, once again, with remembering the maps and the notes and all that stuff that she would find in the office. And not much is known about the information. How we said, one person got the information, Lydia Dara, who saved Washington. Another person got information that helps Stonewall Jackson. Not much is known about Mary's or Bowser's information because it was destroyed. Back then, you weren't going to have, nowadays we have computers, we back up everything. Everyone backs up. But you wouldn't back up treasonous stuff that if somebody found would get you killed. So they destroyed it, and none of it was there. And so the only stuff we know is from Van Loo writing about her. And so one of the things she would say is, when I open my eyes in the morning, I say to the servants, what news, Mary? and my hatred never fails. Which basically, what you draw from this is that we don't know what information, but whatever she got, it was good enough and influential enough that she was able to go and send this to Grant, and it helped him with the war. Like I said, not much is known about her after the war. The last recorded, you know how like we keep records of people, like this person went there, that person went there. Nowadays, like credit cards. Back then, it was wherever like you were seen. After 1868, she was disappeared from the face of the earth. Nobody knows what happened to her. Right after the war, she went around telling stories of her several aliases. She would tell her like stories of her exploits, like I was a spy in the Confederate White House, and that's how she made her living. But after '68, she was just gone. And didn't touch that. Oh no, don't do that. All right, give me like 5 seconds. What's that? Okay. All right, there we go. Sorry about that. It literally got me to the end of the presentation. And like this, yeah. I was taking a break because this thing decided to hit me. Alright, so sorry about that. What happened? So we were talking about Bowser. And remember, like I have photos, everybody. This is a photo I have of Bowser. So when you go to Wikipedia or Google or anywhere, this is the photo you'll see for Mary Bowser. But Mary Bowser like did not dress like that. And so when people, some guy did research onto this, he's like, I don't think that picture's of her because that chair's not right, the outfit's not right, and photos are very rare back then. So they did research on this, and there's the envelope that the original envelope that it came in, and it has Mary Bowser's name on it, and the address that was Petersburg, which was from the place. It was kind of like maybe her. They went more into it. If you look at the photo, well, you know why they thought this was Mary Bowser in the first place. I don't know. It's once again with people stupid. The date on it is 1900, right there, and she was born back before the Civil War. She would not be back now. So this is one of the things. Like when they say do your research, this is a photo the world uses for Mary Bowser, but there are no known photos because this is of a Mary Bowser probably 50, 60 years later after she was this age. So that's one of the things that I do. And now we get to Greenhow. Greenhow was a very wealthy active person, and what she basically did was she was sympathetic to the Southern cause and got the information to Beauregard. And so the first battle was Manassas, and she caught a dispatch saying, hey, you need more troops, and Beauregard went, I need more troops, asked Johnson for troops. And then they got more troops, and they won the battle, which was all thanks to her lovely intel. And this is a traditional point. And so they basically said, thank you for aspiring and doing it fine. And after the battle run, she was arrested and kept in Old Capitol Prison, which was a Union prison, horrible conditions, but she was eventually let out and just banished to the South, at which point she went to England, and then that's her daughter. She went to England with her daughter. That's her daughter. And over in England, she became an unofficial diplomat and talked to Napoleon, Queen Victoria about once again recognizing the Confederacy as people, or as a country. And coming back, she was on the Condor, a blockade runner, but was intercepted by the Niphon, and the Niphon accidentally chased him aground. So in the chase of trying to get the ship and saying, what are you doing? The Condor ran aground and actually sank, and she actually drowned and died. So that was a rather abrupt end to her story. Civil War nurses. During the Civil War, nurses were a new idea. Nurses weren't like how we see nurses everywhere. We go to a doctor's office, there's a nurse. We have ambulances. They're EMTs, not nurses, but same sort of kind of difference. Army has whole slews of nurses. Back then they didn't. And so Dorothea Dix is like, women want to help. We want to be nurses. And they're like, okay. And they put her in charge. So she spent every waking moment of her every waking moment during the war, gathering supplies, gathering people, recruiting women to be nurses during the war. And they say that she did not take a single day off in all 4 years of the war. So this is a woman who totally threw herself into the belief, that we should have nurses, and made sure that happened. But the most famous nurse would be Clara Barton. Clara Barton was a nurse who worked for, she was originally from Massachusetts, and then moved down near Washington, And she was going to become a school teacher, then decided she didn't want to, or she did, but then decided to quit when a male teacher was paid more than her for the same job in the same place, and she's like, I'm not doing that, goodbye, and she left. And she moved to Washington and worked in the patent office for the longest time until the war broke out. The war will break out in one of his presentations, just so you know, because the war did break out. All right, and so basically she got supplies. What she did was gather supplies and send them to the Union on the front lines until she went down to the Battle of Antietam and saw the carnage down there. And after she saw it, she's like, I'm not just going to leave these people down there, and stayed with them the entire rest of the war. One of the quotes she had was, she was at Antietam. You guys know, heard of the cornfield at Antietam? One of the bloodiest places on, like, the bloodiest fight ever on American soil happened in the cornfield down at Antietam. Once again, do research if you want. If not, whatever. So one of her quotes is, a ball passed between my body and my right arm which supported him, cutting through his chest from shoulder to shoulder. There was no more to be done for him, so I left him to his rest. I have never mended that hole in my sleeve. So what happened was she was holding this guy, supporting him, like, come on, let's go. And the ball went right between her arms and, like, killed him as she was holding him. And it was that, like I said, it was that moment that she said, I'm going to stay here and help these guys. This is horrible thing. And so she stayed around and she helped the wounded soldiers during the war. And then after the war, she worked in a lovely place that we don't really hear of. It's called the Bureau of Records of Missing Men of the Armies of the United States. We don't hear of it because it's not around anymore. This bureau was founded just to try to help find missing people from the war, and they managed to find 22,000 people, but they're believed to be over 40,000 still missing. I mean, okay, she made a difference. But after that, this is what she's known most for. She went to Europe, to Geneva, and heard of the Red Cross being founded. She's like, I want this. America needs this. We're going to do this. And came back and lobbied heavily for America to adopt a Red Cross and start with them. And she got it. And how many people have heard of the Red Cross? All right. How many people think they're just there to test you about giving blood? All right, no one good. This was interesting. I don't know if you guys know about this. Have you guys heard of international humanitarian law? Has anyone heard of that? Okay. Basically, what it is you've all heard of the Geneva Convention, right? Like, this is what you're allowed to do in war. This is how you treat people, like, the wounded, the surrendered. That's the Red Cross actually does this. Their main thing, how they started, was the Geneva Convention. They wrote it. They wrote the parts of it, not the American Red Cross. And so they are in charge of the Geneva Convention and making sure it's followed in all the countries, as well as help making sure people have the basic needs. Once again, humanitarian laws, humanitarianism, helping people. So Red Cross does a lot more than just donating blood. They send a lot of money, people all over the world for humanitarian aid. It's not just the American Red Cross. Almost every country has some sort of Red Cross. And so there's branches, like I said, worldwide. And then also the Red Crescent is another organization. There's a whole list of them because the Red Cross is seen as a Christian thing, because it has a cross. And so, like, America uses it, Britain will use it, Canada, and those countries. But some countries, mainly the Islamic countries, like, well, we don't like crosses. We like crescents. We're like, good for you, have your crescent. So it's the International Society of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent. And during Hurricane Katrina, the Red Cross was there, as we should, I think, would be well aware of. But over 150 countries offered aid, and a lot of this was done by other countries' Red Crosses to our Red Cross, and all that crazy stuff. And this is just the Red Cross, right? That's what we know it of, or know it as. But there's also the Red Crescent. This is like a crescent that's red, like the Red Cross is red. Red Crescent is a crescent that's red. Can't be so much simpler than that. This International Red Cross Red Crescent Federation, and that's just some other things that they can use for this symbols of the Red Cross. And this is just completely random. But okay. So ambulances are cool. I'm also a firefighter and I'm working on my EMT license, but that's another story. So I like ambulances. So the Red Cross will actually put the Red Cross on their thing. Instead of the medical symbol, they will put their cross. But in Islamic countries, they'll put the Red Crescent. And then in Israel, they'll put the Star of David because that's their cross. This is completely random. But so this is like in America, our ambulance look like this. This is the local ambulance. It's just white. It says ambulance, right? Look at Ireland's ambulance. This is British. They have like these cool yellow paint jobs with checker patterns. Anyone else find that cool? No. I think we need to bring up our thing. I don't know what, but we're being outclassed in ambulance. But anyhow, let's get rid of that. So now we got to World War One. Don't, again, like anti-feats, don't worry. This is where it starts to wind down really kind of fast. So, for the first and main person we'll talk about is Mata Hari. She was born in the Netherlands during before World War One, and she, from an early age, she was a striking looker, as she was described as. And she could sweet talk her way into anything, and she was daddy's girl until daddy left. And so daddy left, and mama died, so she was an orphan. So she went to school to become a teacher, but with her striking good looks, she was expelled for having relationships with the married headmaster. So that, but then she realized sexuality could be a ticket in life, and so she just hopped on that bandwagon and went for it. And she found a newspaper ad saying, looking for a girl of pleasant character. And so she's like, might as well. So she went to talk to the guy, and it was somebody from a captain stationed in the West Indies. It was the British East Indies and the Dutch West Indies. And most of the time down there, they were like pretty good money. They were officers. They had nice houses, lots of servants. He wasn't. He was actually very, very poor and owed a lot of people money. And he also gave her syphilis. This is a very, very bad turn of events for her. Because then she had two children who also had syphilis. And their father, who apparently wasn't the smartest person, went to get the camp's doctor. And the camp's doctor went to medicate her, but this guy is used to working on people like my size, like men. And when he went to administer the medicine to a little child, he overdosed one of them and just about killed the other. So one of them died, and the other one was just very sick from an overdose for a while. So they went back to Netherlands. They got divorced. She got custody, but she didn't want the child, and so she got to give him to her husband, and he had her. And then she rebranded herself Mata Hari, an exotic dancer. And with her good looks, she was able to dance exotically. Remember how I said that sexuality she thought was her ticket in life? She wore a lot of transparent or flowy, very little garments. And Paris and a lot of Europe had very strict obscenity laws. Like you had to be clothed. If you weren't, you were actually arrested for indecency. You could have just a little too much showing. But she got around this by claiming them as exotic temple dances, which they were not, as anybody from the area would attest to. It was just her little excuse, and the ignorant Europeans, who were ignorant to these temple dances, went, "Cool, do it." And so she would always give a little thing like, "Hey, this is a temple dance, not an erotic dance, so just watch." So this is the outfit, one outfit she would wear, and I'm just going to show you a few outfits. But this is what she normally wore. And then this, another one, and that's a colorized. As you can see, today's standards, not bad. Back then, she might as well not be wearing anything because of the extended enough. So let's get that out again. So she lived in luxury. She was always constantly companioned by the rich people. If you have good looks and you can dance well, you can find companions all over the place. So they would give her money to live. Come live with me. Here's some money. Go live. But then, at the outbreak of the war, Germany went, "Hey, Mata Hari, you want to be a spy? We'll give you this much money." And she's like, "Yeah, I will." Takes the money and doesn't deliver. She just kind of takes the money and hightails it out of there. But this is another thing. All right. So, Paris, where she was going to spy on them, they stopped at a British port. And you know how, we were talking about stereotypes, they still persisted, and they actually, nothing incriminating her as a German agent was found, but they were suspicious of her good looks, of all things to be suspicious about. Just because she looked pretty, they're like, you know, she's not too pretty, which apparently is cause of worry, apparently. But one quote that they wrote down, you know, they wrote down stuff on her thing. It said, she speaks French, English, Italian, Dutch, and probably German. Handsome, bold type of woman, well and fashionably dressed, which is a very good compliment. Very well versed in languages, very well dressed, very bold and confident. But then it said, not above suspicion, most unsatisfactory, should be refused admission back to Britain again. So basically saying, this girl's too pretty, we should trust her. Which, when you think about it, isn't kind of silly. Like back nowadays, you know, it doesn't matter. Back then, nothing incriminating was on her. She technically was a German spy. She could have been arrested and executed as a German spy, but she had nothing on her that said she was. Just the fact that she was too pretty was enough for them to put them on her, basically put them on her no-fly list in Britain. There was no sale; his plane was just invented. But she was basically not allowed back in Britain. So she went to France, where she continued to perform in her dances, you know, keep her companions, and make some money. And once again, she was so pretty, the French intelligence agency actually put her under surveillance for a while. Then she went and married a Russian named Maslov, who was stationed there working with the French.